So Dave Billiter, welcome to the Carrie Croft Show.
It's a pleasure.
I mean, this is just like a treat, isn't it? It's like a little slice of heaven.
I couldn't sleep.
Now, you know what's funny?
Couldn't sleep last night.
So doing this was, there's multiple reasons why I started this podcast. And the one of the greatest joys that is sort of organically coming out of this I didn't expect was having people in my life come on.
Yeah.
Because when I first started, I mean, this is like, episode 30. So it's not like I have a ton under my belt. But there have been some that are pretty, like Gene Smith, for example. I mean, you're Diane Menashe, like you're studying and you're thinking and you're framing up. But I don't have to think about you. I don't have to think about my brother or my dad or people who I know in my life. And it's really cool to just be able to sit down and lock eyes and just have like a real conversation. I'm just thrilled.
It's almost like I get excited about, events that I know I'm going to see my buddies.
Yeah.
Because it's like there's at least an event that I know that's on the calendar.
Right.
Where I get to go see my friends.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt today.
I remember when we met.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to tell you.
Was it at a grocery store?
No, that was when I met Drew.
Okay.
Drew Anthony. Okay. Actually, we do need to give props to Drew Anthony right now because Drew and I had that quick little love affair at whatever you want to call it, at Clyde Evans.
Yes.
Which involved basically kind of flirting and nothing else. Sure. But definitely crush.
Yep.
And then when he came back home from the Army, we all got together. Yep. And then that's when
it all kicked off.
And so then all of a sudden, that summer, we all hung out. We hung out every single day.
One of the best.
Whenever we could.
So 1979, that song can take me to those places.
Yeah.
It can.
No, it's nostalgic. Yeah.
Those summers were fantastic.
And we're from Lima, right? So part of what's great about being from small town Ohio is there's not a lot given to you in terms of shit to do. And so you do have to get a little creative and use your imagination. And I feel like, just like with that summer.
There's something pure about that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, having older kids now and watching how they socialize and what they do, there's something more pure about that and the interaction. Because it was more about just getting together and seeing one another and wherever the night would take us, which could be a lot of places. So,
and sometimes it would take us to jail.
That is factual. Yeah, that is true.
I do kind of think we just kind of need to wherever this ends, whether it's on the cutting room floor or social.
It was more of a reprimand by the law.
Well, until I got put into solitary confinement.
True.
We were all at the Square Fair. There were two bouncers that were carrying you out. And I look down and I see someone being carried up, and it was you. And then we all rush outside.
What I do remember, though, is when the bouncers were having a discussion with me as we were gracefully leaving the dance floor, they're like, "You know why you're out of here, right?" And I was like, "Why?" They're like, "This crowd cannot contain themselves with your dance moves."
Isn't that amazing how
that's what I remember.
Isn't that amazing how we all have our own and who's right and who's wrong?
That's
no
right.
one. We're all kind of right and wrong in our own way, aren't we?
Yeah.
So here
that's true.
It is true. And so here we are today, fast forward, and
wow,
it's really
that was a few years ago.
It was, and it's wild because we do have so many parallels. We're both from Lima.
Yep.
We had two parents that did their best, but ended up getting divorced.
That's true.
And the ripple effects of that for you as a young boy with a sister. What's up, Chrissy? gotta give Chrissy a little shout out. And being so close to your mom. I mean, you and Wendy are like, right?
Very tight.
So what was that like for you?
What was it like for me? Some of it was just learning to more so appreciate, right? Appreciate the level of effort to raise kids. It's not easy. Thinking back on it's made me appreciate, although challenging and difficult at the time, it made me appreciate both sides of the fence. And that's not something that I was doing at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and, even when the divorce happened, I was a senior in high school, which was, that was a tough time too, just being a senior. But, you think back on it, and there was a lot of, it's somewhat the clay part of it. It helps mold you, into maybe what you want to strive to become, or, setting barriers on what you don't want to do. And I think that was, you hear a lot about lessons learned, a lot of lessons learned there. But it what it did, it made me appreciate my mom's efforts, and then, it also allowed me to see the other side of the fence, whether it's from my dad's view. And but here's what I can say. I think there's part of me with Lima in general, and then even growing up in that area, we're tough people, and I believe that. Whether you look at it as blue collar, or it's just. I think there's a lot of success, your success, our friend's success, whatever you determine that to be. We work hard, right? And there's an ability to adapt and overcome. I think that's a lot of what I saw out of my mom, and even my dad in his childhood. Adapt and overcome, and strive to be, make it work.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that, and I think those elements of that time in my life, it helped mold elements, right? Or somewhat, make sure it's there that you can look back on and go, okay, do this, don't do this. And there's plenty of examples throughout that time period of, things that I don't know that I would change, but I would think about things differently. But yeah, I think Lima itself, where I grew up, I use these examples now with my kids. You had to be a tough kid. You had to be a tough kid, and life's tough, period. So I think, running a business, as you know.
So this brings up a point that what you just said about your kids, because I think you and I have talked about this before. You always want to give your kids more. You always want your kids to have. It's true. In it's theory, true. Right? You don't want your kids to struggle. You want to give them the greatest experience possible.
It's true.
But when you're from Lima, and you kind of grow up in a certain way, you're like, this gave me some edges, and 100%. It gave me some wisdom. Like, I don't want you growing up in this insular bubble where you're soft and entitled and just don't get it. So making sure you're injecting sort of like,
it's hard.
The kind of that mentality of work hard, take nothing for granted, teasing that out.
Carrie, that is a that I would say that's a constant for me. Thinking about that balance. You kind of referenced it, but I do think where I live now, right, wrong, and different. We do live in a bubble, and I'm very proud where we live, where my kids grow up, the schools they go to, the opportunities that they have. I'm very proud of that. I want to make sure that's known. But I'm not saying anything my kids wouldn't tell you now. They're not as tough as me. They're just not. And it's that at times bothered me. And let me tell you a story, because it relates to Lima. So this is when Casa Luau was still open.
Casa Luau, R.I.P.
Yeah, I know, right? So Casa Luau was basically in my backyard through the field, and my mom loved to go there. So when we go back to take mom out for her birthday or some special event, she'd always choose Casa Luau. And we had, I don't know if it was after eating or before eating, I was like, let's go by our old house, right? And we drove by, and the kids were there. And I remember, and I have 3 kids, so I don't remember which kid it was, but they're like, oh my God, you live there? I was so pissed off. I slammed on the brake. I was like, if I ever hear you say something like that again, it bothered me. So, yeah, it was, but it was just more of like, you don't even know. Like you don't know kids, but that bothered me. But it also, they were younger and I could understand, where they were somewhat coming from, but it's just a different makeup. And I think you said it, folks from that area, I think there's an edge. Sometimes good.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes bad.
For sure.
Right. And there's and I've had both. Right. And it's but I have a lot of love for Lima.
I mean, how can you not, right?
Yeah, I mean it's still home.
Right.
And what's crazy is I thought about it. Lima comes up often because we'll be places different. It doesn't matter, and it just happens to come up, and my wife's always like, "You got to be kidding me!" It always comes back to Lima. I'm like, "That's right.
Yeah,
remember that.
Don't forget it."
But now it's still home. But I've lived longer now in Columbus, and it just doesn't seem right. But it's still home to me.
And so as we're sitting here, and I'm thinking about these cast of characters that we would hang out with. And just how a group of people can essentially be from the same place, have essentially the same opportunities, and really the paths that everybody has taken. I mean, it's a very wide range of outcomes, right? So we have one friend who's in prison, that's serving 16 years, right? I mean, your best friend growing up, and that's hard.
It's extremely hard,
and I know it's got to be super hard for you, because I will tell you, the number of times that I'll be just going throughout my day and I'm like, I wonder what he's doing right now. And I know in my mind the range of
what you
he's probably doing one of like 3 or 4 things, but I really try sometimes to like put myself there and think about him. And it's really hard to remember everybody kind of being together with the same opportunities and life ahead of you, to knowing like, life doesn't always it doesn't always go the way it should go.
Well, and I think if you probably lined up all of us and you had, and just kind of knowing our backgrounds and intellect or non, he would have probably been one individual where you're like, he's going to be very successful. I mean I'm being honest. He would have been. I think he would have been picked to be, he's going somewhere, right? And you just never know. Your paths.
And then you would have been.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
You would have been the wild card,
I probably would have
been
a wild card, like
total
definitely.
Wild card.
Actually, that's a really good tag.
It's true, because the thing with you that I've always said.
Oh boy.
It's as a compliment. It's a huge compliment. You have such a special charisma.
Well, thank you.
And everybody out there who knows Davey Billiter would be nodding their heads like, you're right.
Well, thank you.
Davey, you could get away. Like I have many that I'll keep in here. A memory.
That's probably good.
Of you being able to do something that if any other human being did it, it would not have worked. And the fact that you did it and you had that je ne sais quoi about you, it was like, it just hit. It just hit.
Well, thank you.
Actually, there's part of me that it's like, well, no wonder you've been able to go out and figure something out and start selling people on a dream, right?
Yeah.
But then there's another part of me that was like, shit, Davey is going to be like off the frickin' grid. So you definitely, and I feel like I'm the same way. I could have gone either way. Talk me through, because I don't think you really had a clue what you were doing in college, right?
No,
you were an athlete. When did the light bulb kind of come on for you where it's like, okay, when did that kind of start your career path?
Yeah. I don't know that there was one moment. Like you and I look back on it, college, I was still I was trying to figure out everything. Like the other day I was thinking, like, how many times did I change my major? Like I actually don't remember. I know I started out in criminal justice, probably because I was just trying to figure out how to get myself out of trouble. But yeah, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to play sports in college, and I knew I had to get a real job at some point. That was where my mind was focused then. But it was, I don't know. I think I look back, and you probably remember my buddy Craig Ass. Mm-hmm. Craig Ass, that's what everybody knows him as. Craig introduced me more into what I would say started the professional path. And it just, each was a building block. And I believe in that, by the way. Like, you got to be able to take bits and pieces from your bosses, like things you like and don't like. And I feel like I've done that along the way as far as figuring out what it is that I was good at. And it was funny because when I finally made it to, at the time, Columbus Children's Hospital, I was still figuring things out. But what I figured out then is, man, I can get behind something that the outcome is treating people, right?
Just
kids. Yeah, treating kids and finding new research and helping figure out better ways to treat kids. I could get behind that. Like, that's when I started to figure out, like, hey, no matter what role I have, it was more the mission, right? I think that's where I matured into understanding what a mission statement was. Because, it took me a while to mature.
Yeah.
But, in that area, just understanding what there's a mission statement isn't just words on there, right? It's like it takes having maybe developed a mission statement for a business. Like, there's a lot to that. Like, what do we stand for? Like, what are we doing? So I think that's really when I would say I figured out that I really wanted to stay in healthcare or life sciences, and figuring out ways to better, generically solve problems. So I think that's really when I figured out, like, hey, I'm not too bad about being in a room, whether most of the time in those roles I was not the smartest person in the world, but I had a different lens at the problem. And, it was funny, I'd come home and tell my wife, I'm like, yeah, I was in a room with all these MDs, PhDs, and she'd go, well, why are you in there? I'm like, yeah, I kept asking myself the same thing, but it was more, I came at the solution very differently. And it was that generic, right? I enjoyed solving problems and trying to look at things differently than everybody else in the room. My favorite job goes back to Lima when I worked for the city of Lima.
Oh, I remember.
Doing all the ball fields.
Yeah.
That was the best.
Yeah. Yep.
And there were some days that I actually showed up to work on time. So, yeah.
I was just thinking what you were saying, because my dad was sitting across from me last week.
Yeah.
Talking about, clearly he's had an incredible career.
Very successful.
And he always will say, I was never the smartest person in the room, nor did I want to be. Yeah. And he got this like psychological evaluation back, and the first thing it said is like, Keith is of average intelligence in this, but then how does someone of average intelligence catapult themselves to a career that only 1%, are able to get to? So it's because you can read the room, you have people skills, how to surround yourself with people. I think that if somebody asked me what's the biggest downfall of maybe a leader or someone trying to get somewhere with a team, I never ever want to feel like I'm like the biggest, best, smartest in the room because I'm in the wrong room. Yeah. And when I feel that way, I'm like, what other room can I get into where I am feeling like an underdog?
But that's a level of maturity. That's a level of maturity that you've gotten to, because I wouldn't say I felt that way in my early 20s. Yeah. Right? That would have made me feel inferior, right? Like I'm that smart. Yeah. I'm that good. So I think it was really the ability that, even when I started my company, was the ability that I could look myself in the mirror and go, dude, you're not that good at these things. So you better figure out how to surround yourself with people that do. Yeah. And it's probably one of the smartest things that I did.
Yeah, get out of your own way.
Get out of my own way. And like, Jesus, man, you don't know all these things.
Right.
Because that was hard for me for years, right? Is going, you know, acknowledging that I didn't know something or couldn't do something. That was just like, that was not part of my mindset.
Yeah.
And I think, again, I say the maturation process, but is just accepting the fact that, hey, I don't know all these things, and it is okay.
It just shows how mature you are because you're using the word maturation.
I thought it
That's
worked
really
well,
good.
by the way.
That flowed like a fine fucking mature wine. You know
I worked
that?
on that. I worked on that last night.
That was amazing. Okay, so for people who don't know you super well, let's put this part of it in sort of a nutshell for them. So you start your own business. It's called Deep Lens.
Yeah.
You're like the deal maker. You're going out.
Yeah.
Give like a high level of what Deep Lens was, and then talk through, because you sold it. Yeah. And now you're a bajillionaire, and now you just golf and hang out, right?
Yeah, right.
So talk about Deep Lens.
Yeah. So I would say Deep Lens was always, for years, that there was these concepts there. You know, even times that, again, it was a puzzle, right? There was these pieces along the way that I would say were either being formed or, you know, were there, floating out there. But yeah, so it was in healthcare. Comes back to, you know, where I found my passion: healthcare, life sciences, and problem solving. So I was at a Fortune 12, I think, at the time, company, Cardinal Health, that I was working. And I had a hard time in big corporate red tape. And I was just like, you know what? Came home, told my wife, I'm like, yeah. And I was getting paid very well and doing well. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. She's like, and what's next? I was like, I think I'm going to start my own company. She's like, right. We have kids and a mortgage and ... right? And I was like, well, I promise I will take care of all that stuff, but I'm going to start my own company. And it was really built around more medical imaging, but the problem was knowing clinical trials, right? And patients all patients not having that, and this was mainly in cancer, but all patients not having the opportunity to get enrolled on a clinical trial. So there was always this, I'll call it hypothesis, right? Mm-hmm. If we could do this better, more people will get access and outcomes will be better, right? So I actually went back to Nationwide Children's on some technology that I was an actual inventor on, licensed the technology out of Children's, and started to really form the company and business plan. But the intent was, how do we get closer to the point of diagnosis to inform the patient that, hey, there's this option in a clinical trial? And I think a lot of people think of clinical trials like it's just pure research, and those are treatment options.
Right.
Right. And that's where, just in my time at Children's and Cardinal Health and these experiences that I had, I was like, well, there's an education piece. There's all these factors, and it actually is a difficult problem to solve. So that's, you know, we started Deep Lens. I brought on 2 co-founders, going back to the story that, hey, I've been in a startup before, but I was never the guy. Mm-hmm. And, you know, raising money, I'd never done that before. So Simon Arkell, 2-time Olympian, right? Like, he's serial entrepreneur. I knew him, built a relationship with him probably over a 10-year period. Reached out to him, brought him on. Another co-founder, TJ Bowen, wicked smart guy. PhD, cancer genetics, but he was also a brilliant business mind. Brought him on. I'm like, let's go.
Dream team.
Yeah, it was. And team's everything. Yeah. I still believe that, by the way. So I felt like we had a really good team, big problem, big market. But we really did start more out as really focused more in the pathology space, because they're the ones that do a lot of the diagnosing. Like, pathologists do the diagnosis highly, right? So we're like, if we start there, well, then as we dug in more of the problem, it got into a bigger area, and we built a platform, a technology platform, utilizing different flavors of AI that was really enabled oncologists, what they call clinical research coordinators, to be more effective at their job, and grew that over a 4-year period and was acquired.
The rest is history.
The rest is history.
Who acquired you? Was it Paradigm?
Paradigm, yeah. So they were actually a stealth company under a stealth name, but there were multiple folks that were really interested in what we were doing because it was different and our tech was better than what others were trying to do. And their CEO, we knew him, fantastic guy, knew the space cold, and he had more of a vision of going into more of this clinical research organization, CRO approach, and he wanted to be more tech focused, and we were a good partner for that. So
you hear that out there? Not too shabby for a
guy from
kid
Lima.
From Lima.
Yeah. It was. I mean, listen, a lot of hard work. That's I go to the Lima. I worked my tail off. That's, as my wife and kids would tell you, worked my tail off. But I was also smart about surrounding myself with really, really good people, partners, employees. And Carrie, I'll tell you, there's luck involved.
Yeah.
People that would deny that.
You absolutely. But then you also say,
you make your luck.
What do you, you say, like hard work and then opportunity kind of makes your luck. So it's not like somebody's sitting over on the corner waiting for something to happen and they're selling a company. So it's like
that's right.
It's some form of right place, right time, but you're putting yourself in the game in a position to win.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. I just think.
Thank you. I like when you say that's right. Can you say that again? That's right, Carrie.
That's right, Carrie. But no, that it's some of it was market, what we were doing. Right, the technology. There's a lot of those factors that played into how I'm defining luck. But it was life changing. It was. I'll be the first to tell you that. And it was, the two things that there's probably a lot, but the two things that I think of with the acquisition of my company. One, what was really, really gratifying was because how we structured everything. Every employee had the options in our company. So in essence, everybody won. It wasn't just us as founders. And that was, I felt like that was super important.
Yep.
So everybody was super excited during that process. And then I think, Carrie, too, what I get a lot is, your company was acquired. And it automatically goes right to the financials. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you're rich, you're this, you're that. And I think the rich piece was more about, I defined it differently. When my company got acquired, I stayed on for a little bit, and then, as a lot of people were joking, you're retired, you're semi-retired. I'd say I'm semi-retired. I had downtime, and that downtime was really, really good for me. Like, it allowed me to take a break, and I was rich in the essence of I could take a breath, right, and somewhat work on me. And I had time with my kids. I could take my daughter to school. Like, that stuff was
rich. That's rich.
Yes. It was just that stuff started to, outside the financial piece. It was more of, man, this is It allowed free time. I could go to the pool with my mom and hang out with her, right? And it was all that stuff that it just gave me a different look on things. Yeah. Really
but okay, let's get back to the financial piece. So when you saw all this coin coming in and you're all of a sudden you're looking at this, chunk of change, you had to have had a moment where you're like, holy shit. Like give me what was that?
Well, the day that I found out that, we'll just say the money was transferred.
Yeah.
And I looked into my account. I actually couldn't believe it. Like, I went and I woke my wife up. I'm like, I need you to look at this. Is this real? Like, this is crazy. I don't know. I think it took me. It did. It took me it took me months to really go, okay. Because I don't know. There's times that I was always like, something's going to happen.
Right.
And this is, somewhat the negative side of my brain was like, something's going to happen and they're going to take this away from me, because I just couldn't wrap my brain around that essence or that component of the acquisition. And, I don't know. It was pretty crazy.
I could not be happier for you, and I appreciate that. No one deserves it more.
Oh,
really.
It's I keep relating this back to Lima, but the people that were so genuine about Davey were super excited for you. A lot of those folks.
Yeah.
And it was there were elements. I mean, the Michael Jordan Hall of Fame speech where he was just like calling people out, right?
Right.
I will say there were elements at time where I'm like, yeah, so and so, I remember you, and I remember things you said about me.
Yeah.
There were times I was like, yeah, I want to call you out on doubting me,
right? But you don't need to call them out, because
I quickly passed over that. If that makes sense.
We all have that stuff inside of me, though. Who do you want to be proud of you more than anyone? If you had to break it down, like, whose approval are you seeking? Is it your dad?
Yeah.
Out of all of it, do you feel like he's proud of you? Do you feel like he's
sure? Do
you feel like he's a little?
No, I do. The answer is probably yes, my dad, but I think it was a collective of people. Even my kids. So I think that's probably true. But yeah, if we had to pick someone, yeah.
What was your dad's response to all of this?
I don't think he could grasp it. I don't. I think he can now.
Yeah.
Especially when I had a lot of downtime, and they're like, "Why aren't you supposed to be at work, or aren't you supposed to be doing this?" I don't know. I think it's still. I don't know that everybody can grasp it, probably, but I feel like it was still. You want your dad to be proud of you,
but don't you think he wants you to be proud of him, too? Don't you think? So, Kate,
yeah.
Do you think your dad kind of seeks your approval a little bit?
Oh, sure. I think that's more of. Probably just years of stemming from a divorce.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure he has his own. I know what your mom's doing, right? Wendy's in the corner with her, pom pom. This woman is like, probably her feet haven't hit the ground.
Yeah.
But you could have done anything. You're Davey, and you're her.
That's right.
Pride and joy, right?
Yeah.
She is just everything a mother should be.
Yeah.
And then your dad.
I agree.
She is, and then some. And then your dad probably has a lot of regrets.
Sure.
And I think seeing you rise. And it's not all about financial, right? But the financial is sweet. This is a sweet part.
There's a.
Let's not pretend, right? So here you are. You've been able to fulfill a purpose, keep a family together, 3 kids, Tara.
Yep.
You've been able to bring financial wealth into your life and your legacy, into their kids.
Yep.
And your dad is probably like, holy shit, he did all this.
Yeah.
My son did this.
Yeah.
No.
I think there's been. I think there's, as you age, right? Again, I've used maturity.
No, could you say it again? The maturation process.
The maturation process. But no, I think there's elements. It's time, right? They say time heals all wounds, but there is. I do. I think I believe in that too. Just time from, the divorce till throughout the years, and it does. Time helps heal. And I think some of that too is the time element. There's a aspect there that, hey, I'm running out of time.
Yeah.
And I think as you get older, you unfortunately attend more, funerals, and you're just your time on this earth is running out. So I think some of that too is letting your guard down a little bit more, and sometimes having difficult conversations that when you're younger, it's easy to just push those aside, but now is not. And I think some of this it's been more the platform to, whether it was I'm doing well in business, or there's these challenges, or there's this, that it's been more of a platform or a mechanism to have those conversations that didn't take place years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I still don't know that my parents or even my friends at times even really know what I did, and the whole acquisition and where I am today. And it's also, I'll just say it, I wasn't out bragging about it. It wasn't something that I'm just like, hey, look at me, look at me. I was proud of what I accomplished, still am. But it wasn't,
You were low key.
I was stealth mode.
That's right. That is so good. All right, Davey, this has been an absolute treat. It's been a delight.
Are you saying this is over?
Well, I couldn't be more proud to know you.
Feelings
I can't wait to see what you do in the future. And for anybody out there, who maybe feels lost, or, if you're younger and you're like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm not on this, I don't have a specific trajectory. I think both Davey and I are a testament that you don't have to have it all figured out. Life is a very windy, weird journey. And so really, I think as long as you believe in yourself and you're willing to work hard and take risks, and again, surrounding yourself with really smart people, well-rounded people. I mean, that's a huge theme in today's conversation, and it's so true.
Yeah.
But there's time for you, and there's a path for you, and there's a place for you in this big,
just
wide world.
Pay attention along the way.
Yeah.
You don't have to have it all figured out.
Yeah.
But pay attention.
Yeah. And you know what? For everybody out there still following your girl, please follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. And until next time, keep moving. Okay, let's listen to some 311.
Boom.